No, you can. Now you can start. Basically, how do you see India being one of the biggest producer of fruits, vegetables, and other? So how do you see the future ahead of us, given our population is rising, given our exports are also rising? How do you see the future ahead of Indian agri business?
Well, there are two big markets that we can look at. One, that an average household in the country itself spends almost half of its expenditure on food. And food cannot be just eaten raw. Gradually, whether it is a very basic rudimentary processing from wheat to flour or from paddy to rice, but there is finer processing also, like milk has to be processed, pasteurized, homogenized, and all that. I think in fruits and vegetables, although we are almost the second biggest producer, we have to do a lot of processing yet. Our processing levels in fruits and vegetables are less than 5%, 3%, 4% estimates. But if you go to Southeast Asia, you have processing levels which range from 20 to 50%. And I think we have to take a lesson out of that and directly connect the processors to the farmers. If we do that, and that can be done not with individual farmers, you have to cluster the farmers into farmer-producer organizations, into groups of farmers, because the processing varieties normally are different than farmers have been growing as table varieties. Whether it is mango, whether it is tomato, whether it is onion, or these are little different varieties. So if there is a direct linkage of processors with farmers groups, then you can organize the whole value chain in such a way that the wastages of fruits and vegetables, which at present people give different numbers from 25 to 30%, sometimes even numbers are 40%. But I would say anywhere from 20 to 30% definitely there is a decay in value, if not absolute damage. Because the way they are being collected, transported, being sold in a Radpur Mandi and then going to the retail level, we don't have a reasonably good logistics in place. So if you can save on this wastage and bring down from 30 to 5% or 10%, that whole saving can be used to build the new logistics and also give a better price to the farmer and a lower price to the consumer. So these are the gains which are waiting to be tapped.
And particularly this is relevant at this point of time, given that the kind of vegetable price rising.
The vegetable inflation is 46%. Now 46% inflation in vegetables this July over last July, I would say it's totally unacceptable. Now, how do we tackle that? And to do that, you have to first compress the value chain and go to the farmer directly so that you can eliminate in between some of the intermediaries who are taking very high commissions. This APMC Act needs to be changed drastically, basically delist fruits and vegetables from this. So if I as a processor or as a retailer, I want to directly buy from the farmer and the farmer is ready to sell to me, what is the problem? And in fact, they should be encouraged that there would be no taxes, mandi fee on that because he is not taking the services of your mandi. In fact, they should be incentivized, give something extra to build some base infrastructure at the farmers' fields, in the villages. This is where I worked on Indonesia earlier and I saw, which was fascinating experience, that all the produce is being collected in the village itself. So they have clusters of 30 farmers, 50 farmers, and the produce is brought to the lead farmer. A basic infrastructure is created there, And what is the infrastructure that you need? There is a raised platform, cemented one. There is a shed. There is a running water. There is a little, cemented hodi type of a thing. So first, when the fruit or vegetable is brought there, it is washed in running water. So after washing, it is dried. There are fans which are drying it, and then there are 5-10 ladies who are sitting there to grade it. Grade A, grade B, grade C. And then they are packaging right there. And then they are barcoding and putting that which group it has come from, so that when it goes to the retailer shelf, they know the traceability, that from which group it has come.
Origin.
And all this is being done. It doesn't require rocket science to do it. It is building an efficient supply chain. And that's how you add value into it.
And what is the policy level thing you can suggest some changes? Policy level for promoting private sector.
The thing is APMC reforms. So delist. So second, incentivize the processors and the modern retailers to tie backwards with the farmers. Now that should not be a compulsion. It should be an incentive. At present we are putting these conditions that they have to invest this much, otherwise they cannot have their front end. In fact, I would say government should put 50% to build that back end infrastructure. So you can give, if you give, subsidies on drip irrigation or even farm machinery, then the basic infrastructure in the rural areas for aggregation of produce, for grading of produce, for washing of produce, for packaging of produce, because you create employment in the rural areas. Massive employment. And then you transport, because you are adding value in the rural area. And then you do it in a proper crate, so it's directly go from the farmer's field to the retailer shelf.
And this will take care of mostly the problem we have in terms of land acquisition. When industrial, we don't invest in agriculture, obviously there is a need of people. So many people cannot be employed in agriculture sector, but still this sector is going to employ a large chunk of Indian population.
Sure. At present, the employment that you have in the agriculture sector is about half of India's workforce, about 52% of India's workforce is still engaged in agriculture. Over a period of time, this employment has to come down. But it's not going to happen tomorrow. It will take another 2 decades, 3 decades. Now, during that period, we need to invest in the rural areas. So, I think with investments, you can reduce the wastages. With investments, you can create employment which is much higher value in the rural areas. You can add value in the produce. All these 3 things you can do right in the rural area, and that's what will bring prosperity in the rural areas.
And lastly, what about the role of private sector? Because they will be going to bring in.
It has to be done by the private sector. Government has to change its policy and give some incentives. That's all.
And the mission, National Horticulture Mission, this
Horticulture Mission is doing something, but I think much of their effort or money that is going has gone in increasing production. Most of the schemes of Government of India
has been
in the past have focused on augmenting production. It's not 100%, but I would say 80%, 85% of the money has gone for. We have not given as much attention to processing of the produce, to adding value to that produce, whether it is in retailing or processing or any other in exports, building export lines. We are not given due attention to that aspect. And as a result, production has increased, but it is rotting because there is no infrastructure to store it properly. There is no infrastructure to grade it properly. And if you don't grade, if you don't store, then what happens is the price goes very low.
Fluctuation
so you are not able to add value. And when you are not able to add value, then even after growing higher level of output, farmers don't gain much. You have to create value.
Absolutely.
And that value can be created at different places.
And lastly, sir, how do you see India's agriculture exports in the next 10, 20 years?
Well, as far as agri exports are concerned, in 2012-13, our agri exports were $41 billion and our imports are about $20 billion. So we are a net exporter of agricultural produce, by almost 100% more than our imports. And this story has been there. We are a net exporter for the last 20 years. And as a percentage of agri GDP, if you add exports plus imports, it was only 5%, that is trade as a percentage of agri GDP. It was only 5% in 1991 when we started off the reforms in 91. Today it is almost 20%. So that means India's agriculture integration with the global markets has gone up by almost 4 times.
4 times, yeah.
It is still below the non-agriculture sector, way below that. But within agriculture, I think Indian economy is gradually integrating to the world agriculture. Right? Now, we always thought we are not perhaps comparative, and when we open up and the flood will come and we will all die, our agriculture will be finished. That's not the story. What has happened is that Indian agriculture, I would say 80% of it is pretty comparative globally. It can be even made more comparative because we still have scope to increase productivity. And
quality.
Much bigger scope is in building the supply lines because our infrastructure is so weak. The moment that infrastructure improves, your competitiveness to export will improve. So it's not just the food grains, it's not just the guar gum meal or oilseed cakes, cotton. But now even fruits, vegetables, fruits in particular,
fresh fruits,
processed, the exports of these are also going up.
So it's a good sign for the Indian agriculture.
Yeah, so I'm not unnecessarily concerned with the downside of agriculture. There are pockets where there is a distress, but there are pockets which are doing very well. So on the whole, Indian agriculture is doing 3 to 3.5% rate of growth. On average for the long term, it is about 3.2. So that's where the story lies. But I do feel the potential to grow is about 5%. Because the investment in agriculture today is about 20% of agri GDP. And normally we take the capital output ratio as 4:1. So if 4:1 is the capital output ratio and 20% is the investment in agriculture, then you should be getting 5%
basically. Yeah.
That means there are certain other bottlenecks which are holding
on to. Yeah.
And that is
irrigation.
Well, investment is there, and it should give us a much higher rate of growth. But I would say access to good markets is lacking. I would say even development of markets through infrastructure investments, whether by the state or by the private sector, is lacking. There are no storages, there are no warehouses. I mean, there is sudden. The biggest things, even in wheat and rice, you know how much is lying in the open. But in fruits and vegetables, it's hardly, except potatoes, the cold storage is 5,000 storage. There's nothing else. So we have to have a long horizon, 10 to 20 years horizon, to build infrastructure in rural areas to keep our vegetables, fruits, and also develop our processing industry in a big way, so that price stabilization of many of the fresh can be attained through processed food.
Thank you. Excellent.